The NATO Secretary-General says the alliance is stepping up its provision of heavy weaponry to Ukraine. Jens Stoltenberg was responding to repeated calls from the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky for more long-range artillery. Mr. Stoltenberg said there'd be a meeting later on Wednesday to discuss sending more supplies.
Ukraine should have more heavy weapons, and NATO allies and partners have provided heavy weapons now for actually a long time, but they're also stepping up. There will be a meeting tomorrow at the NATO headquarters in the contact group for support to Ukraine.
Let's talk to our correspondent Nick Beek, who is in Kyiv. Nick, how close do you think NATO will come to providing what Ukraine says it needs?
Morning, Karen. I don't think they'll be getting what they want, the Ukrainians, because for days and weeks now they've been saying that they simply don't have the military capability to push back the Russians. The Ukrainian commanders say they're extremely grateful for the continuing help and weapons that Western nations are sending, but simply without the firepower to match the Russians, they're going to be losing territory. And so today, in the city of Severodonetsk, where we've seen some of the fiercest fighting in recent weeks, there is supposed to be a so-called humanitarian corridor. In other words, a pause in the fighting where the Russians are promising that some of the civilians who have been besieged in that place can escape, can go to safety, actually to northern occupied territories. We don't know how that's holding. We don't know whether that's been able to take place. But certainly, if you look at other cities like Mariupol on the south coast, the Russians were accused of opening these humanitarian corridors and then opening fire and in some cases killing the very civilians they said they were going to give a window to escape.
We focus more and more on Severodonetsk, Nick, but there are some parallels with the city that you mentioned that was under siege for so many months, Mariupol. You've been reporting on what life is like for civilians there now.
Absolutely. I mean, so many places, it's hard to get a clear picture of what's happening. Communications are so bad. And so you get bit by bit accounts of horrendous life in different cities under Russian occupation. But in the case of Mariupol, thousands of people have come here to the capital, to Kyiv. And in the past few days, we've been able to meet those who've been escaping very, very recently. And they paint an extremely harrowing picture of what it's like to be there under Russian occupation. A Ukrainian city blasted into submission, now forced to celebrate its occupation. While Russia tries to airbrush history, it offers the bleakest of futures to those still stranded in Mariupol. This family managed to escape. Yulia describes conditions she left behind just 2 weeks ago.
Dead bodies were lying outside every house. No one took them away. Hopelessness, fear, pain. Almost every family has lost someone. Later, some of our men found a destroyed swimming pool and took chlorinated water from there. That was all we had to drink.
Now in the relative safety of the capital Kyiv, they're reunited with others from their home city. Group therapy for the Mariupol exiles. A traumatised, displaced community. People come to me with panic attacks, says psychologist Anya. The explosions and the murders, they see all of the evil that the Russian Federation has brought to Ukraine. Families are fragmented. Anastasia and Yevdokia don't know if they'll see their grandparents again. This place has only been open a fortnight, but already more than 5,000 people, all from Mariupol, have come here for support. Many have lost loved ones, their jobs, their homes, and they've managed to escape a city which is now described as hell on earth. Back at their rented flat, Yulia tells us about the Russian missile strike that killed 10 neighbours and her mother Valentina.
Everyone who survived went outside. There was shelling. This was 3 in the morning. We stood there realizing our loved ones were still in the basement and could not be saved. The whole house was on fire. It was the scariest night of my life.
Mykola now mourns his wife of 52 years.
I'm starting to cry. It's impossible for me.
Before the invasion, Anastasia was trying to build a career with the National Railway Company. Now, she's trying to rebuild her family.
The grandfather always told to me when I was desperate, this is life, and for now this is war. You have to stay strong because we are Ukrainians.
And that sort of fighting spirit, that stoicism, that sense of defiance is something you find quite easily here on the streets of Kyiv. You talk to people in public and they will say similar things. We are Ukrainians and we won't give up. But privately, behind closed doors, this is a place where there are communities, whole communities, of people who are really suffering privately. The pain is clear to see when you sit down and meet them. And the big worry, I think, Karen, is that these are not isolated cases. Thousands of families across this country have been impacted by this war, and as it grinds on, it seems that more and more will be put in the same dreadful position as some of the families we've been meeting over the last few days.